Oh, hi. How you guys doing tonight? It looks like we finally got some things working out there. Hopefully you can hear me and our guest Kevan Trimmel. How you doing, Kevin?
Doing well, thanks.
Oh, awesome, man. So, hopefully everybody can hear that. So, we got the last hour and we can go late if we need to always, if Kevin wants to stick around, go into overdrive lateness. It's a little earlier out there where you're at, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 8:53, but as an abductee, we're kind of night people, right? So,
Yeah.
so we can go late. I go to bed at dawn for that reason anyway. So yeah, let's do it.
Right on. Well, Dan will be joining us again here in just a second. Let me hop over to YouTube, make sure everybody is settled back into place, I guess, before we get started. And I just want to apologize, guys. That was totally my fault. I should have debugged all that before, but I could have sworn I had it all working. But you know how Skype is, Microsoft, Google. All right, so Kevin, it's been a while, man. How have you been? First of all, before we even get into it.
Uh, yeah, I've been good. As you know, we did the spirituality within the SSP roundtable with Elena and Penny, and we got a little bit of blowback or whatever you want to call it. Like we got
Right.
pushed back a little bit from that, and I actually decided to get off Facebook about 2 months ago, like because of that experience. Elena was threatened outright, but it was just weird that during the same like 24-hour period when she was receiving those emails from that guy, someone started sending me like on a fake Facebook account like a bunch of SSP like buzzwords. Like it was almost like a spam like message, but it
Right.
was just like trigger words,
Mm-hmm.
like boom 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 boom. But it was more of like a harassment thing. Like it's like he wanted me to like jump on to like one of the phrases and like argue with him or something, but it was pretty blatant and obvious because at that point, Elena had already told me what was going on,
Right.
receiving like those threats. So I don't know. I just thought to myself, I'm like, I'm not like I'm an INFJ in terms of the Myers-Briggs personality typing. I'm an introverted, intuitive, feeling type person. So I'm not really that social, and Facebook kind of was draining me anyway. And then I realized that when I thought I was just going to do the first interview with Denny, right? Like back in June. I thought I'd just do one interview as like a witness testimony kind of thing. And one thing led to another. And I've done like 10 interviews now. And I just thought like when you start doing all these interviews, if you're on Facebook, you're very accessible. Like
Mm-hmm.
anyone who watches your interview can just type your name into Google and then add you on Facebook. And what I don't like about Facebook is even if they're not your friend, they can still send you messages.
Right.
So yeah, so I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to get off Facebook, and I did that about 2 months ago. And what was kind of neat about that is Will Glover, who you just interviewed. He's not on Facebook. He's more of a writer,
Mm-hmm.
and he's got his website and that. And I've done a roundtable with him. But after I got off Facebook, I started emailing Will because I'm more on email now. And just right off the bat, you interviewed him, and I watched his interview this morning. I know,
Catching
yeah,
up.
yeah, I know. Kind of procrastinated on that a little bit. I was supposed to watch it a couple weeks ago, but I just moved. I just sold my condo, and
Mm-hmm.
the house I'm in now is the very first house. This is my first house that I purchased. So I had to focus on 3D, selling my condo and house hunting and all that. So I didn't really have time to like get into the exopolitics thing lately.
Right.
So this morning, because we're doing this interview, I'm like, okay, I better watch Will's. And just right off the bat, I'm in communication with Rochelle. She's one of the people that I was working with behind the scenes in the summer. And I encouraged her to go public with Denny, which she did. And she also did a higher self channeling session with Carl Mollison. And she made that public just like I did. And the thing about Rochelle is, even though I didn't technically serve with her, her recall is very much like mine.
Mm-hmm.
And what's weird is a couple of months ago, she reached out to me and asked me if I knew about that Golden Spa, the underground base that's like really fancy, and it's like this golden spa, as Will calls it. And when she reached out to me about that a couple of months ago, I did in the summer. I had a recall where I was in the golden spa, and it's like it's weird. It's underground. It's there's like marble floors with these big, tall, like glass doors, like 12 feet high, and going into different areas. And it looks like a fancy hotel. It kind of reminds me of the Peabody Hotel in Florida. I stayed at the Peabody Hotel in Florida, and it kind of reminds me of the Peabody, but on a much grander scale. But it's underground. And so I was in this like lobby area, and they had the big glass doors, and they had these nice chairs set up, and with like ferns and palm trees. And I was kind of waiting in there, and then this concierge guy in like a black suit, he showed me up to this hotel suite. We took an elevator, we went up one floor to this hotel suite, and I walked into the hotel suite, and basically there's this lady in there, and I kind of realized that at that point, like, to be, I guess, completely honest, what I realized at that point, it's like what Will talks about in terms of alters, the sex kitten. I realized that, except she ordered me. I realized in that moment that this lady had ordered me to the room, which is kind of like role reversal in terms of the stereotypical, you think like, oh, a rich guy, like the Illuminati, these rich guys are going to order like escorts up to their hotel room. It was role reversal. It was, she ordered me.
Damn, I didn't know you was a gigolo. You must got a nice house.
Well, it's not that nice.
I'm just busting
house.
out.
But no, it just really tripped me out, because I was literally watching this morning, like a couple hours before this, and Will's talking about the Golden Spa, and Rochelle had also mentioned that to me, and I'm just like, yeah, I know that place. It looks like a fancy hotel, but there's much more to it. It's one of those really fancy underground bases where there's certain levels that I guess the royal political elite, they get to go to like this golden spa underground, and so some of the levels are like literally like a luxury hotel, like a 5-star hotel underground, and they kind of they can kind of do whatever they want down there. But there's more to it. I don't know about like the nuclear stuff. Like you talked about them hiding like a nuclear bomb down there. I don't know about that. I just remember Rochelle reaching out to me, and she asked me about that, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds really familiar, because the way she described it with the really tall glass doors and the marble, and just the way it was set up. But it's all underground. There's no windows. And obviously, when I went to the Peabody Hotel, they had windows and skylights and everything, except this was totally underground. There was no windows. So right. I just thought I'd get that out there. Sorry, as a little intro. I just thought that was interesting.
No, that definitely was. What do you think they would be hiding a nuke down there for?
Sorry, say that again.
What do you think they would be hiding a nuke down there for? Nuke.
Well, I'm just speculating. I don't know, but
right.
I think.
But why would you?
Well, what Will said resonates. They have definitely. I know for a fact that they have hidden nuclear bombs. I thought they were just in the undersea bases. I thought they were only in like the Pacific Ocean, like deep down. They've hidden these nuclear bombs, and it's kind of a situation where, as ridiculous as this sounds, the Illuminati Cabal, what they've done is to protect themselves from outside intervention. From a different ET race that decides to come here and says, you know what, we're going to liberate your people, and we're going to take you guys out, and we're going to take over, and we're going to land on the White House lawn and just liberate everybody and just let them know everything, and just you know what I mean. Unfortunately, what the Cabal has done is they've planted these nuclear bombs deep underground, and they like a little kid, they're going to break all their toys, and we're the toys, and they're just going to break all their toys if anyone tries to stop what they're doing, the little game they're playing. If anyone like tries to stop the game they're playing, they're going to literally fire off these nukes and just wipe out the surface population. And so that's one of the main reasons why in case you're wondering, because we live in a big universe in a big galaxy, and obviously ETs could have come here with higher technology and revealed all this stuff to us and taken them out. But unfortunately, they're like, to use the analogy of a little kid that's going to break all their toys, except we are the toys, right? So.
Right. Dan, what were you about to say?
It's like what they used to call it, the Samson contingency. It supposedly had this thing set up to where if like it ever looked like America or Israel was going to get destroyed, that they would nuke Antarctica and flood the whole world.
Yep. So that's kind of one of the reasons why we haven't had, I guess you could call it, divine intervention from like a higher density ET race that has more advanced technology. It's because, and actually, this is actually something a gentleman by the name of Jerry Wills, most people have probably heard of Jerry Wills. He was having some contacts with the Tau Cetians right up until 9/11, and his birthday is on September 11th. And apparently one of the, there's many reasons for September 11th, but one of them was to also deter benevolent ETs from intervening. It was like this mass sacrifice where they literally said, hey, this is what we're willing to do to our own people to go to war and to fulfill our agenda. So it was kind of an example of them like making a sacrifice. Literally, like 2,000 people died of their own citizens in America, and they're like, yeah, we're willing to like just kill those people to go to war, and if you guys try to intervene, you're gonna have a 9/11, except it's gonna be, much bigger. So apparently Jerry Wills, he used to have contacts once a year on his birthday, and after 9/11 they haven't come back since that time.
Interesting.
That's scary stuff.
So who do you think did 9/11?
Oh, I don't want to comment on that. You can ask Anthony about that, because sorry. No, I was just talking about Jerry Wills.
No, I just figured I'd put it out there since it came up.
Well, I'm a Canadian, so I can just I can hide behind the fact that I'm a Canadian. I don't know. I honestly don't know. But it was to fulfill an agenda. I mean,
right.
It's such a cliche that
I can't say I know exactly who was behind it. I've got some ideas, and I know some people who were involved, but I don't know who actually was like, do it. Couldn't say who gave that order.
Yeah, I don't know, but I know it's a cliche, but it was definitely an inside job.
Yeah, no doubt.
Enough said, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, I just figured I'd put you on the hot seat.
Oh yeah, thanks for that.
Who done did the 9/11? Tell me.
Yeah, that's what Americans want to hear. Some Canadian telling them about their business, right? But yeah, I know it's interesting. We had all this interference, and last night I had an interview with Aquarian Radio, Janet Lesson, and we got some interference. And this always happens before interviews. I always get it's always a terrible night's sleep the night before, and this is the first time I've had 2 interviews back to back.
Oh yeah, so, you must be worn out.
Well, yeah, I'm a little tired. But what's weird, and I mean, there's other things I want to talk about. I want to talk about a recall eventually in detail that I had with Anthony in December. But just to, right off the bat, just to get this out there. So we had some interference in the second half of the show, and so I went to bed after that. And about 2 hours into my sleep, I wake up and I hear this like sound frequency, like vibrating the room. And my vision is all like pixelated. It looks like it's my room. Like I didn't see anything in the room. I just heard the sound frequency, and like it's really hard to open my eyes. And I opened my eyes, and it was like pixelated, my vision of my room, and it looked like on a 1080 TV if you watch something in like 240. It was all like pixelated, right? And I hear the sound frequency, and I'm lying there, and I don't remember what actually happened, but I kind of like just realized in that moment, I'm like, as weird as this sounds, I'm just like, yeah, they're here, they're here, or they're just leaving, kind of thing. And a part of me, I'm like, wanted, because I've only been asleep for like a couple hours, so a part of me, I got really freaked out by this, and I thought, maybe I should just like force myself to get up and just drink coffee all night, and like, because I'm afraid to like go back to sleep. But then, I don't know, this other thing kicked in. It was like my higher self, and it just kicked in. It's like, you know what? Guess what? You have to go to sleep eventually anyway. So even if you stay up all night drinking coffee, by 9 or 10 a.m., you're going to just like pass out anyway, and they can take you anytime. So it's like, why not just go back to sleep? So I did. I'm like, you know what? I did. So I just rolled back over. I went back to sleep, and something really weird happened after that, but it was actually kind of a good thing. After they left, I had this experience where I was in like this European looking like German town, and there was this river, and I'm like jumping into the river. It's sunny. It's like a summer day. I'm just jumping into the river, and this tall blonde, like Nordic looking lady, she walks up and she says, "Wie geht's?" which means in
What's
German,
up?
you know, how are you? Now I don't really speak German, but I know Guten Tag and Wie geht's. So I know how to say hello, how are you? And that is about it. And she walks up and she's like, "Wie geht's?" And I just kind of smile at her and I'm like, gut, 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 because I know that's good. You know, like das ist gut, right? I'm like, gut, gut, yeah. And then she goes, she says, "Ich bin dick." And I'm like, "What?" And then she's like, "Ich bin dick." And she's starting to speak German to me, and like I don't understand what she's saying, and I'm thinking, you know, because I just said gut, gut, maybe she thinks I'm a German speaking person, just saying like good, good, I'm good, right? So she's like, yeah, ich bin dick, and then the dream just ended. Now, when I woke up after like everything I just said, like when I woke up, I realized I had two like very different experiences. Like the experience with this like Nordic lady was actually very like positive, even though I got a little confused by her speaking German at me. First thing I do is I go into Google, okay, and I type "Ich bin dick" into Google, and the translation, and like I had no idea what she was saying, and this is what trips me out. This is a visitation, because like that's not me. It's not like in this head, this brain. Like I don't know what that means. And so I type "Ich bin dick" into Google, and it means I am you. That's what it means. So anyway, that's what's been happening as in like the last 24 hours.
So I mean, you know, your initial impressions. What do you think that might have been? Could it possibly been an alter, or just
A clone?
maybe your subconscious messing with you, past life?
I think it had to do with like the fact that I had the courage to just go back to sleep. It's like my higher self. I think it might have been my higher self.
Right.
I have done quantum healing hypnosis sessions, and I have had past lives as women, and actually the MIB in North Bay, the last thing he said to me when he left me in the church, he said, "Your name was Michelle and you were murdered." And when I did a quantum healing hypnosis session, I found out that in the 1960s, I was a woman in New York City that got murdered. So the fact that my higher self showed up as this blonde, German-speaking, Nordic-looking lady, if that's my future self, maybe in a future lifetime, I reincarnate as a woman again. But I just found that really, really weird that I didn't understand what she was saying. Like, she's like, after she said "Wie geht's," she kept saying, "Ich," "Ich bin dick, ich bin dick." And I'm just like, I don't know what you're saying to me. And I'm just like, "Goot, goot, goot." And like, then I got kind of like nervous because she kept saying that to me. And then I woke up, and it like this morning, it really tripped me out when I typed that into Google and it said, "I am you." And then right after that, yeah, I have my coffee, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna watch Will's interview because you guys just interviewed him, and we're doing our thing today, and then he talks about the Golden Spa that Rochelle and I had a recall also of. So it was just a very synchronistic day for me. So I'm not surprised we had a bunch of interference.
Me neither, actually. Yeah, we could definitely pin that on Skype because everything was working. Our audio was going out to the stream. Everybody was hearing that. They were actually hearing you, but Skype wasn't letting my voice go to you. And so it wasn't a hardware, it wasn't anything else but Skype because Hangout's working fine. Same stuff. Yep. Very interesting. Who runs the Skype?
I don't know, but I have had trouble with Skype. I updated right before my interview with James Rink, and same thing. He couldn't hear me, and it was a whole thing. And basically don't update your Skype if it's already working. I'm going to say that.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to try and see if I can roll it back or something, because our phone system goes through Skype, unfortunately. So we kind of stuck with it. So, I mean, that's pretty amazing stuff. How'd your other interview go, by the way?
Oh yeah, with Aquarian Radio, Janet and her husband Sasha. I was really honored to be interviewed by them. They're published authors. They wrote some books about the Anunnaki, which I haven't read yet, but they're based out of Hawaii, and I also respect the fact that they have their own website. They have their own platform. They're not. They do put some stuff on YouTube, but they already have. If you go on aquarianradio.com, they have like hundreds and hundreds of interviews. People. Way out of my depth. I mean, they've interviewed people like Dr. Richard Allen Miller, who I've been following that guy. He's an amazing guy, and a lot of other like amazing people they've interviewed. So the fact that they're willing to talk to me, and that was actually our second interview, and yeah, I was really honored to speak with them. And like the first hour, like the sound came in really clear and we were going good. And then we took a little 5-minute break. And then after that, we had this weird, we were all hearing like a weird echo, like hearing your own voice. You've probably experienced that too.
Yes.
You hear your own voice when you're trying to talk to someone. That's weird. Yeah.
So, well, what else have you been up to? I mean, it's been a couple months since we've caught up. Anything else? Just moving around, getting your new house straight and all that?
Well, yeah, on that note, I can speak to that. Like lately, I've just been focusing on like 3D stuff because I decided to sell my condo and move out into the country. I'm out in the country. I'm about 10 minutes away from Lake Erie, about 2 hours south of Cambridge, 1 hour south of London. And so I'm within bicycling distance to the lake, and I'm like 10 minutes away from where my parents used to have their sailboat when I was a kid at Port Glasgow. So it's kind of neat. I'm like back in my old cottage country. I was able to get a house for super cheap. Literally sold my condo in London and was able to buy a house for the same amount because I'm like in a town with like 3,000 people. So, you know, no one wants to live here because it's like a small town, but I got a whole house. So that's cool. But yeah, what I wanted to talk about was after I did that roundtable with Anthony and KJ Scoops in October, that night, same thing. Like, so we do this roundtable, and I posted that. We decided we just want to do a roundtable, and we recorded it, and we didn't really, because no one actually interviewed us, we didn't really have anywhere to put it. So I just quickly made a YouTube channel just to throw it up on the internet, right? So we could post it on Facebook as a YouTube video. But anyway, that night after that roundtable, I had like an abduction experience where I'm standing out on my parents' street in Cambridge, and I was at that time staying with my parents. And this black SUV pulls up, and there's 3 guys in it, and the guy driving looks exactly like what Anthony in the roundtable described as Lincoln Clay. African-American gentleman, really well dressed. He was driving. He never spoke. He just drove, but he was clearly in charge. And there's 2 other guys in the car, one in the passenger seat and one in the back. They open the door and they say, "Get in." Like one of the guys, they say, "Get in." So I get in. Oh, and so we're driving. And then and the Lincoln guy, he's looking in the rear view mirror at me the whole time, just staring at me, but he never spoke, but it's like he was controlling the other guys. And yeah, like the one guy, he says to me, "Give him the venom, it'll help him remember." And then the other guy grabbed my head and like put my head down and injected me in the back of the neck with something, I guess the venom. And but it was like reverse speech because it didn't help me remember. It made me forget. And that was in the beginning of October. And like all summer, I was recalling things. And, you know, I did a couple of roundtables and I was recalling things. And after that experience, I believe that was on October 7th or 8th. I have it written down on my timeline. I have not had any more recalls since that time. And to me, that's profound. Yeah, because I was like remembering a ton this summer. And then after that experience, I literally have had no SSP recalls. Like last night when I had the interaction with the Nordic lady, that's not SSP. That's like, like higher self, or like your guides, your angels coming through. That's something that's more personal. But SSP related, since that experience in October, I haven't been able to remember anything more. Yeah.
Right on.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, but if they mind wipe you after, like, let's say you get like maybe not a whole 20 and back, but maybe like a 5 and back, right? They say that they can take you and you'll do 5 years on a mission, then come back and be sent back, minutes after you were taken. What if it was something that you ran into off world, and how would you know?
Well, yeah. Like on that note, one other thing did happen, and this is the shared recall I had with Anthony in December. The whole like 20 and back, like I think that's just a catch-all phrase for any SSP term. Like you said, like you could be taken for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 60 years, however long they want to take you, right? Like,
but when you come back, it's 10 minutes after you've disappeared.
Yeah, right. So you got your SSP term, and Elena also talked about this, how, you do your SSP term, but then when they put you back, once in a while, they'll grab you for like a live operation, like a quick little mission, like for a night or two.
Yeah.
And that happened in December. And this is the only thing after the whole like Venom thing. This is the only experience I've had since that time. This was on December 5th. I wrote it down in my dream journal timeline. And on December 5th, I had this recall where I'm sitting in this conference room, and it also looks like a library. And there's like all these guys, like executives in business suits. But then there's a laptop on the table, and on the screen, like a video call, like a Skype call, is Anthony, except there's no audio. So like in my recall, everyone's talking and I can't hear anything. And Anthony's talking too. And he seemed to be in charge of, or put in charge of the operation that they were telling him to do. And then the memory skips ahead to me and Anthony were strapped into the TR3 beside each other. And we're flying, and we're remote viewing a submarine that is underneath us, and we're actually remote viewing through the floor of the TR3 psychically. So there's no view screen. We're actually just remote viewing the submarine, and it's cruising on the top of the water, this black submarine, and it's cruising on the top of the water. It hadn't dove yet, and we were tracking the submarine. So this was on December 5th. So I was still on Facebook at that time. So I woke up and I immediately told Anthony about this recall, and he's like, "Oh my God, man!" He's like, "I remember that." He's like, "I don't remember necessarily the conference room thing." He's like, "I remember being on the TR3 with you, and yeah, we were tracking a submarine, and I think he talked to you guys about that submarine thing."
We did when we did that 12-hour craziness. When he came on, he talked about that.
Yeah,
I think he said he thought it was you were taking out HARP technology or something that was mounted in them subs.
Yeah, that's what he said. Again, no audio for me, so I had no idea what the mission was. Right. I couldn't remember. Couldn't remember the mission. They just wanted me to literally remote view this thing, and I just thought it was interesting that he did have audio in his recall. He remembered what they were actually doing, which I guess there was HARP technology on the sub. He actually remembered what they told him to do because he was in charge of the mission. He was absolutely in charge of the mission, and I was just another remote viewer that was brought along.
Now, I wonder if, do you remember, interacting with them, talking to them and stuff, but you just can't hear it? Or were you just not talking, couldn't process nothing? You think maybe they locked you out from even hearing or speaking? Just had you remote viewing?
Yeah, it's tough because a lot of my recalls, even the recurring dreams, there's no audio. It's like watching a movie, a rerun of a TV show, and you put it on mute, and that might have been blocked, I think. Because, I mean, really, if you can't hear what people are saying, it's like, what can you gather from just seeing? So I can describe a lot of my recalls. I'm just going through the motion of describing of what we did, but I don't remember a whole lot of dialogue. Yeah, because I'm not really in charge of anything. I'm just brought along, and that's another thing with an empath. We're there to listen. We're an observer. I'm an empath, so the whole point of being an empath is you're literally there to let everyone talk, and you observe quietly, and then the commanding officer will debrief you afterwards, and they'll ask you not what they don't ask you what do you think happened. They ask you what do you feel this person meant by this. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that's a reason as an empath why I can't remember a lot of audio.
Yeah, because it's all just, reading feelings and stuff and feeling things. So that makes sense. Yeah. That would stick out in your mind more, I think, than any type of sounds. Being an empath.
Well, and
I'm speculating here, but whatever.
I mean, I don't think I'm an empath or anything, but in a lot of the magical workings that I've done, where you communicate with entities outside of yourself, it doesn't come really through as audio. It comes through as just impressions and visualizations and feelings.
I would say you're an apath.
An apath.
No, an apath. Nice. Just apathetic to everything.
But hey, on that note, because what you said is totally true. I'll give you an example of that. I got asked a question in an interview about the gravity plating inside the TR3s, right? Because on the ISS, like International Space Station, they're floating around up there. So there's this gentleman who interviewed me. He asked me a really good question. He's like, so in the TR3, is there gravity when you're in space? And there was like an Earth-like gravity, except I'm there to be a quiet observer. I'm an empath, so I'm there to feel people. You got the pilots, you got the soldiers that are running security, you got like the technicians, the engineers, the doctors. Everyone else has a particular function that they're doing. I am literally just a neutral observer, like a Deanna Troi from Star Trek, just meant to feel people out. Okay. And so I'm not a scientist. And so he asked me about the gravity plating, and I'm like, well, yeah, like there's Earth-like gravity on the TR3 when we were flying in space. And he tried to ask me like, well, how does that work? How does the gravity plating work? And in terms of my recall, this is as much as I know about the gravity plating. I was sitting there in the TR3. We were flying up on the view screen. I saw a space station. It was like a black cylinder that had these black squares, 5 of them, like inserted along the cylinder, and it was black, and it looked like the coating on like the B-52 bomber, like the like black like stealth coating. You could barely see it on the view screen, except they had this light holographic green like outline of it on the view screen to highlight it as we were approaching. And so I'm strapped in, I look over, I see that this like outline of a space station we're flying towards. And because we're out in space, I realized that like, wait a second, like we're not like, like our arms aren't floating, right? Like it's still gravity. And across from me is like the commanding officer. And typically when they pick you up, they'll have a couple guys on one side, I guess the abductees, and they'll have a commanding officer that's watching you and staring at you. You're always being watched. And he's staring at me, and he knew what I was thinking. He was reading my mind. He knew what I was thinking. And he literally did this. He tapped his eye, and he's like, look at me. And then he pointed down. And so I looked down, then he tapped his foot on the floor, and on the floor were these black metal tiles. And they were metallic tiles on the floor. And I knew what he meant. He was telling me, like, he was reading my mind about the question about gravity. So before I could even say anything, he was answering my question. And he was telling me that these metallic tiles on the floor, that's why we're sticking to the floor. But again, like, I'm not a scientist. They didn't explain to me how that works. Mm-hmm. It was just one of those weird little moments where I'm thinking like, wait, there's gravity inside the craft. And then this guy's like, look at me, look down, look on. And then he tapped his foot on the tiles, the metallic tiles on the floor. And I knew what he meant. that's why we're sticking to the floor. So, yeah.
Wow.
So
pretty far out.
Yeah.
Yo, I had a really weird dream not too long ago about this anti-gravity cube. It was like an elevator on the outside of this building. And yeah, I don't know if this was an astral projection or an actual dream or something, but it was this city on an inhabited moon going around a gas giant. And there was this huge arcology type tower where the elevator was like this bright silver cube, right? With a door that just kind of slid open and it looked smooth from the outside, like just silver. But I don't know, it was pretty far out. And I don't remember if it was, you know, a dream or an astral projection or a past life or something. But it's
Actually, yeah. Well, because I watched the interview with Will where you mentioned that like earlier today, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I guess my question for you, actually, this is really cool, actually, because I just watched that interview. So my question for you on that is, how did you feel during that experience? Did you feel like did you feel calm and peaceful, and did you enjoy the experience, or were you scared?
excited.
You were excited. Okay. Well, yeah. This is something I was talking about with Janet on Aquarian Radio, because she's had a lot of like SSP kind of experiences, except hers are really benevolent and positive, like what you described, and it's on a much grander scale. And she feels like she's like treated really well, and it's more of like she gets like a tour. And what I've come to realize is something that came through with Carl during the channeling. There has been an ET secret space program since the dawn of man. And they have grabbed people throughout history to be a part of the ET, like higher density ET secret space program. And that's different. That's star seeds that get picked up and they get like a tour of like a place, and they kind of get to come home again, have a little reunion during dream state, and then they get put back as a subtle reminder that, hey, like you are a part of something else before you came to Earth, right? And then the human secret space program is still in its infancy. It just started during the 1930s and 40s and didn't like fully launch until after World War II. So like that's like less than 100 years window of the human secret space program. And in order to get a human secret space program, we had to cut deals with a bunch of regressive ETs like the Greys and the Raptors and the Insectoids, and basically the beings that were physically willing to do business with us, and they obviously had a very negative agenda. So there's two secret space programs. You got like the ancient ET
right.
space program, and then you have like, you know, like Knockwoff and Solar Warden, Earth Defense Force, like these, like, but they're kind of like the new kids on the block. It's just like the first time humans actually have a bunch of Tinker Toys that can kind of like go into space, you know, for the first time.
Now this ancient breakaway civilization you're talking about here, what would you say what type of races make that up?
Like as in the like the ET, like the higher.
Well, you said the one that was been around. Yeah, I guess ET is what you said.
Yeah, like in my research, and also based on some of my contact experiences, I would say that's what people might think of as like the Andromedan Council. I wouldn't say it's not like the Federation, the Confederation of the Federation of Light, or the Confederation of Light, or the Galactic Federation of Light, or the Ashtar Command, or whatever. I think some of that is a major psyop within the New Age community. Has to do with false ascension, because they always make these like predictions that at any moment we're going to ascend into fifth density overnight. You know, like these ETs are going to decloak and they're going to bring us into the fifth dimension like overnight and save. You know, the ETs are going to save us. That's the underlying thing within the New Age, right? Like the ETs are going to save us at any moment, and that takes self-responsibility away, because that way you don't have to detox, you don't have to cleanse, you don't have to be aware, you don't have to actually activate your DNA, you don't actually have to ascend from 3D into 4D into 5D. It's just tomorrow the Ashtar Command is going to save us. And I think that's a major psyop. It's almost like the Rapture, but for the New Age community.
And then on the other hand, you have groups like don'tgetontheships.com.
Right.
So it's always one or the other. It's either they're going to save us or they're going to eat us.
Well,
But
I mean,
it's
that
never
guy,
like,
well,
and they're casually interested in us.
that's Ralph. So he was one of the earliest space program whistleblowers, and he talked about being on Mars and stuff. But yeah, I personally would agree with him. If some ships decloak all of a sudden, they're like, "Hey, come on us, happy fun time." I ain't get on that damn ship. We crazy?
Well, the Earth. Here's the thing. Even if you're a starseed, you want to have a human experience. So before the genetic manipulation, you had Homo erectus, and Homo erectus is not as primitive as we might think it is. We think Homo erectus is like this primitive monkey being that we evolved from, and it's actually more. If you look into like the psychic Sasquatch, Coloni Lapsaritis wrote some books about that. An eighth dimensional being that is actually an ET. So like Bigfoot, might actually be an ET because it looks like a big hairy ape when it comes here, we assume that it's Giantpithecus, but it's not. It's actually just an ET, just like a reptilian or a gray. And that's why there's no bodies, because they actually come here in a craft or through a Stargate. But anyway, Homo erectus, the original hominid that was evolving here naturally on the planet, was very, very much a multidimensional being. And without the genetic manipulation, as Homo erectus, we would have evolved from Homo erectus into Homo illuminus. We are never supposed to become Homo sapien. Mm-hmm. The reason why Homo sapien, we are the way we are, is because this predator came from the cosmos, gave us their mind, made us dependent on technology, and pulled us away from raw nature. So that at this point we cannot, because of the genetic manipulation, probably due to some reptilian DNA that we have, we don't have hair all over our bodies, and we're not able to evolve or live in raw nature anymore. We're reliant on the system, technology, to shelter us. And I mean, really, I think about it. When, if you're going to live off the grid and just walk out right now naked in any climate, you're going to have like a big trouble, whether it's hot or cold or temperate. You're going to have some trouble in our Homo sapien body without having to make some kind of clothing or some kind of technology, right? So the Homo sapien is the genetic hack. But originally, as Homo erectus, we were supposed to evolve from Homo erectus, which was a third density being, into a fourth density being, which would have been Homo illuminus. And we still can. We're still 98% ape, so we still can evolve into Homo illuminus. And I think that one of the major reasons why, all the genetic manipulation, the poison in the food and the water, they're trying to suppress our DNA potential, because we still are very much Homo erectus minus the missing link. And they're really, really worried that people might just bypass the Homo sapien thing and actually become Homo illuminus in this lifetime for real. And I think that's the major conspiracy, is in terms of secular humanism, is that they do not want us to become Homo illuminus, a fourth density consciousness being. And yeah, so
would you say no, it's okay. So would you say the reason for that is because they don't want to lose their the slave system, I guess? There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, because secular humanism, the 7 billion primitive worker, surface population workforce, it's a genetic farm. We also we build things for them. We create energy for them. Then you have the human secret space program, where you got the abductees, you got the hybridization program. So we are an asset. We're it's just like the precious metal cartel. The factions that control the surface population of the planet, that is a commodity, just like gold and silver. The primitive workers.
Right.
It's far out. Excuse me for just a moment, guys.
Yeah. All right. Hey, bye, Dad. Bye. All right. So, okay, where were we now? So, how much do you remember about Solar Warden and the way the program is organized? Any type of details that you can lay on us?
Sure. Yeah, just getting more detail about my actual experiences. I do remember at the LOC, Lunar Operations Command, flying into the crater. There's like a dome-like structure inside the crater, and it opened up, and the TR3 lowered into it, and they showed us out of the TR3, and standing in this corridor were about like at least 30 cadets just standing at ease, staring at the wall. That's one of my earliest memories. And they had orientation at the LOC. They had this girl come in, and she taught us on just a projector screen. She taught us about the densities, the megahertz levels of various beings. Humans, I guess, resonate at between 50 and 60 megahertz, and fourth density consciousness, which is still physical, like third and fourth density occupy the same space, except a fourth density being is resonating at a much higher megahertz level. They're fully telepathic. They speak through feeling and emotion. Their aura is so intense that if a fourth density being was within 100 feet of you, you would just, even as a third density being, you would just turn around instantly. You could feel them. They taught us all that. That was orientation. And then, they took us to Mars, and that's when things got really weird. That's where I encountered Elena as an instructor, and she did the Qigong swimming lessons, except no matter what energy work you did in the pool, you always drowned at the end. And it was this survival dynamic, because think about it. Even if you made someone jump into a pool of water and they couldn't climb out of it, they would keep treading water as long as they could. You wouldn't just stop. Even if you know you can't get out of the water, are you just going to give up? No, it's the survival dynamic. So they want to test everyone's strength, their megahertz, their survival dynamic. How long can you generate enough energy to stay afloat? So that was what Elena did. And then there's another lady, and that was the remote viewing program they taught us on Mars, and it was a Templar. It was actually a Templar group. They wore the Templar white tunic things. Didn't have a red cross. Didn't have the red iron cross. It's just they were these white tunics that the instructors wore, and they taught us remote viewing. But it was at first it was the standard SRV, scientific remote viewing, where they give you coordinates on a piece of paper, and then you have to just get into your meditative state and do automatic writing, and you do the standard remote viewing. That was the intro to the course. But then it progressed, and it got more and more weird, where they would give you drugs. They would make you kind of trip out, and then they'd put the piece of paper in front of you, and you do the same thing, but now you're getting these waves of euphoria, and you're able to get out of body much more easily. And and I try to block it out, but I think there was some sexual stuff too that they did to really raise your Jing energy to really get the energy flowing, and then they give you the drugs with the sexual stuff, and then but it's not like having a good time with your friends, or you're watching a movie.
Yeah,
they're literally putting something in front of you, saying you need to do this right now. So you're peaking, but then they're no, you're focus on this, tell us what you see, tell us what you feel, and you're drawing stuff as you're tripping out. And I guess they were comparing that to the standard SRV. So yeah, that's the stuff that happened on Mars. And then
well, before you get too far, man, let me ask you this: while you're at getting your orientation at Lunar Command or LOC, there you said you were with a group of about 30 other cadets, right? So was there did you socialize with any of them? Did you talk to any of these people, get to know them? Did you hear anybody else's stories of how they wound up there? Was everybody talking about just getting plucked up out of the woods or something like that? I mean,
that's a really good question. That in that corridor, there's about 30 people. I'm just guesstimating here because
I'm not holding you to any exact specifics here, man.
But what's interesting is when I showed up there, I feel like they divided us into two different groups, because one of my first recalls I have is the one with KJ. in the underground barracks, and this could have been a lower level at the LOC, because it was like these Mayan-looking ruins in this dark gray-colored granite, and it was all cut out with laser precision, these chambers, and they had set up some cots and some beds. And this is the first time I met KJ. And what was interesting was after I did my first interview with Denny, again, no real audio. So the way I described it was, I'm talking with this blonde girl, and she's sitting on the edge of the bed, this blonde girl with a curvy nose, and she's telling me something, but I don't know what she's saying to me. And then the lights go out, and there's about 16 of us. And then when the lights come back on in the morning, 3 people are missing. And she's one of the people that are missing. And so after she saw my interview with Denny, she reached out to me, and she decided to go public. And she remembered actually what was said, just like Anthony remembered what was said. Mm-hmm. And she said that what she was doing, she had the same recall when she was in that underground barracks, where she was telling people, like, we're going to remember this. We're going to remember this no matter what. Like, she was very, she was breaking, because you're under like a trance, right? But mm-hmm. she was combative. Like she was like not giving into the trance. And she was literally going around working people up when we're supposed to be sleeping at night. And she's like, we're going to remember this. Like, we're going to remember this. And she was giving us that like subtle command, and then they caught on to that. So they removed her. And from her perspective, when she got put into like this cell for like 2 months in like solitary confinement, and then she got transferred to a different program. I think she actually got transferred to the ICC, and she became a pilot for the ICC, flying like a shuttlecraft or some kind of craft. Like, she became a pilot, but I don't think that was her original purpose. I think she was picked up by Solar Warden initially, and she became kind of like a problem. They couldn't really contain her. So since she was already, in their program, they just kind of like sold her off to the ICC, and she eventually became a pilot. But they kept her. She remembers being like locked in a cell for like 2 months after trying to tell people that, like, myself and another gentleman, that we're going to remember this. And 3 people that went missing in the morning, I know one's KJ. The other one is Dave Marrow, and I've talked to him as well. And so Dave Marrow, he did an interview with the Basis series a couple years ago. He's one of the guys that went missing in the morning, because he was totally on board with what KJ was saying. And then there's a third person. I feel like it's also a male, but I can't put a name or face to the guy. I just feel like there was like, the lights went out, and then I felt like 3 people were gone, and I've been able to identify 2 of them so far. But sorry, I hope that answers your question about an interaction that happened early on, right, where like she would, like, this girl's running around and everyone's kind of in this trance, and then she's like not in the trance, and she's like, guys, like, wake up, like, we're gonna remember this, like they abducted us, they're gonna we're gonna remember this, and then boom, next day she's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I was just wondering if maybe during your time that you talked to any other people about how they got abducted or how they ended up it. But I mean, if you don't have any recall of that, that's fine. I'm not trying to grill you on it or anything, but that was definitely an interesting story. Another question I have is about your during your time on Mars when you were doing the ICC training. Do you remember what your accommodations were like?
It was always you're never alone. Just like at the LC, like they always put you in a room with a bunch of people. And you always had to sleep around other people. I know that, like, it's weird. Like Tony talks about this. Like, you come back with like traits. Like, you come back with traits, and you can't explain why. And like to this day, I really like being alone, because I think for a while I was constantly surrounded by people, and I even had to sleep beside other people constantly. So I never had a moment's privacy. And what's interesting is, like, I'm 29 years old. I'm in my late 20s, and I should be a really social person, and I have an awesome circle of friends. But like, I really value being alone, and I think that's a trait that came through.
Mm-hmm. So you would say that it was the same way on Mars. You were crammed in with everybody else. Now, once you completed your stuff on Mars, where did you end up on? Did you end up on a ship? Did you go to a base?
I think in terms of like my recall, there's an incident that happened after my training in 2011. When one of the ICC colonies got attacked by one of the reptilian like subspecies. I don't think it was actually the Draco. I think it might have been like just another rogue reptilian group. And this is one of the actual missions where I was an active duty empath. And Elena has the same recall. And during our first conversation on Skype, we talked about this, except she was serving on one of the Nordic craft, and I was on a Solar Warden craft. So what's really, really trippy is, and we made that public, it's in this audio interview as our first conversation, we're like finishing each other's sentences, going over the same recall, but from two different perspectives, because I never like encountered her because she had already trained us. And like, so she's on one ship, I'm on another ship. But there's this like conference that was held with the Solar Warden people, and I feel like this is after the training, because I was actually active and I was being an empath at a conference, and you had some Nordic beings, and you had the Solar Warden people, and you had a couple people from the ICC, and they were discussing how the ICC needed to give upgrades to the Solar Warden craft, because the whole purpose of Solar Warden is to be like the Coast Guard for the solar system. And this rogue ET element had come in, had attacked one of the bases on Mars. They were still hovering around Mars. Apparently they had sent some scout craft actually into the atmosphere of the Earth. And they were like literally, I'm not sure if they were drones or actual manned craft, but they were sending little craft like to buzzing the Earth. And they were worried, like, are they going to attack the Earth now and kind of blow our cover? Right. So it was a big deal. And eventually, because the ICC groups, they're very, very competitive with each other. They didn't want to share tech with each other, and they didn't want to share tech with Solar Warden either. But the Nordic group, and which kind of oversees that, because the human secret space program, it's more of a joint effort. It's not like fully human, it's a joint effort. It's overseen by the Nordics and one of the gray factions. And it's weird, like, I don't know, there's all these like parallels in Star Trek, because if you watch like that Enterprise series, like, which I know I didn't do that well in the reviews, but you got like in the early days of like the Starfleet, you got like the Vulcans that are holding back the humans, and then they finally get to launch the first Enterprise. That's kind of like what Solar Warden is like, except the Vulcans in that show are like the Nordics.
Right.
And oddly enough, in that show, they're in the blue uniforms, and the Nordics wear blue uniforms. And so the Nordics are like overseeing this, and they're letting the humans, the ICC group people and the Solar Warden Navy people like argue this out, like about the upgrades. And it was really just for show, to give us a sense of free will, because ultimately the Nordics just put their foot down and said, you are going to give them the upgrades because their job is to protect the solar system. One of your colonies got attacked. Who cares if that's your competitor? Guess what? They're going to attack you too. So you just got lucky. Like, eventually they're coming for you too, and then they're going to come for the Earth. So it was like a big deal in 2011, and it's just weird. It kind of coincides with the whole 2012 thing, because our group came in just prior to 2012, and there might have actually been an ET invasion if that conference hadn't been held. And that's why I actually think nothing happened in 2012, because this ET group, this reptilian group, was trying to fulfill like some kind of prophecy, and they didn't quite expect the Nordics to step in and actually facilitate this conference, where they said, yeah, you guys actually, in terms of the human factions, you guys actually have to share your technology and bring Solar Warden up to speed so that we can actually defend the solar system. And I don't even think there was a fight. I think they just got the upgrades, and the Solar Warden craft went out and like basically met them head on, and just showed that we were willing to fight, and we had upgrades, and the reptilians backed off.
Now, do you have any recalls of? You said now you talk a lot about the Nordics being involved with Solar Warden, but was there any other ETs around?
Yeah, there was definitely
like
the tall grays, like the long nosed tall grays, and then the small grays. But those, the small grays, like the Nordics would like do these hand signals. and be directing the small grays around. And then I had, when I say the tall grays, I only had one encounter with a tall gray, but it was in this room. It was sitting at the table, and I was supposed to interface with it, and it basically communicated to me like telepathically. It gave me this download, and it talked about in the download. It basically conveyed to me that, and this is the perspective of the long-nosed grays, is that humans are just beasts on a farm. They consider us clever animals, and we have this we're just like this genetic farm, and not just humans, but the entire biosphere of the earth is like a zoo, and we are just like this kind of like a Noah's Ark in space because of all the biological diversity on the planet. They kind of view us as something that if they're in need of biodiversity, they can come here and like going to a greenhouse when you buy flowers, and they can just like grab something that they need, whether it's ocean life, plant life, human life, animal life. They just see us as like this genetic farm. And that's what it conveyed to me in terms of its belief system and perspective on us.
And this was a tall gray, you said?
It was a tall gray, except it had a long nose, like
Now,
a goblin nose. Yeah.
do you have any recalls involving any Zetas at all that you know of?
Well, after I got put back in 2008, in 2011, I had a gray abduction experience where I was lying in my bed, and I was paralyzed, and I felt like this electrical, like I was being electrocuted, and I couldn't move. But then instead of being afraid, I got angry, and I started to force myself to sit up. And when I opened my eyes, I saw two tall grays standing beside me. And when I sat up off the table, they kind of freaked out because I breached like a safety protocol they had. I wasn't supposed to sit up. I forced myself. It took like every ounce of strength I had. Like it was like I could hear them around me, and because I'm a remote viewer, I realized that there were grays around me, and I kind of had two options. I'm like, I can play dead, even though I'm not actually unconscious, or I can try to like actually sit up and get a look at them. And I did. It took everything I had, and I just went for it. And then when I opened my eyes for a second, I saw them, and they're standing there and they're freaking out. And then I got hit with this like electrical shock, and it knocked me back, and I heard the weirdest sound I've ever heard in my life. It sounded like all these keyboards, like synthesizers, and like as I was getting shocked, I heard like this weird sound, and then boom, I was back in my bed. So yeah.
Were these like I guess harmonic tones? How would you describe the sound?
It sounded like, I'm not a musician, so I'm guessing here, but it just sounded like when like a synthesizer, like a keyboard, except imagine like lots and lots of them, like hundreds of them, and everyone's just pressing random keys.
Like so beeps and boops, or was it more like a musical instrument sound, or was it just like straight
more randomized, but like times 1,000? Like just
Right.
like imagine like everyone mashing on synthesizers, but like 100 people doing that at the same time. It's like, whoa.
Right. So what I'm
Yeah.
trying to get a feel for is like the tone of the sound. Was it like, like a washy type wah, or was it like beep boop 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 boop? I understand.
I
You're
guess it
saying
was more of a. I know it was more of a trippy like wah wah, but it was loud and it hurt. It was overloading my sense of sound. It was just overloading me. Yeah.
Now, one thing when you were talking about the Nordics earlier, I guess in terms of evolution, like how much more advanced do you think that their psi or magical abilities are than your average humans?
Well, the Nordics I've encountered, they're still physical. They're fourth density, so they're just as physical as you and me, except they're like a little bit more refined, but a little taller, just a little like thinner. They're a little bit more because their energy is more refined, and they're just they're resonating at a higher megahertz level. So instead of 60 megahertz, they're resonating at like 300 megahertz. So their aura is like, you can almost see, like, I guess maybe that's where the halo thing comes from, because you can see like this energy bubble around them, and like very little can touch them in terms of like second density, third density life. Like they kind of have this bubble around them.
See,
and
I can
they
kind of see that anyhow. Like I can kind of make out yours. Just over Skype or Hangouts or whatever it is we're using. But
Well,
I've
cool.
always been
Well,
kind
I
of
try.
sensitive
I
to
do take a lot of monoatomics. I mean, I really took to heart what I learned in the program, and I'm trying to flip it into a positive way, although that could just be a trick of the light. But I do take a ton of monoatomics. In case people are wondering, like, how do you evolve from third density to fourth density? You have to feed your light body in like a very real way, which you have to do major detoxing, and then you have to do monoatomic crank ups, and you have to actually raise your megahertz level. Basically through Ormus and monoatomics. But anyway, I don't want to get into that. That's a huge subject. I'm actually going to do an interview with Elena just going over the Ascension stuff. But yeah.
We uncovered plans for a Rife machine not too long ago. And we're thinking about maybe trying to build one.
Right. I think I've heard of that. It sounds familiar.
It's a frequency generator.
Yeah.
Essentially, it uses 2 sub frequencies and it's supposed to like eliminate.
It's supposed to be able to destroy
like
viruses,
bacteria,
cancer cells,
stuff like that.
Okay, yeah, I use the Terminator zapper. It's a 7 hertz zapper that emits a frequency to kill parasites. So what I do, one of the cleansing things I do, it's like on the same principle. One of the cleansing things I do is I take diatomaceous earth, which is fossilized clay. It actually has these little microscopic shards in it that actually
I've used that to get rid of fleas before.
Yeah, it cuts into the exoskeleton of parasites in the gut. But then what I do on top of that is I take the 7 hertz parasite zapper, and when I do the diatomaceous earth, I put the zapper on my stomach and I move it around, and that way, because even parasites have like an energy body, right? So you have to like zap them and use the clay, and like that's my parasite cleanse I do when I'm fasting. So like yeah, frequency stuff really does work. Yeah.
Well, what I'd like to do right now here at this point would be to, if it's okay with you, because we're up on 10 o'clock, so...
But we don't have to be off the air at 10 o'clock anymore either,
so I'd like to take a short break and then come back, and maybe... We can't open the phones because obviously Skype's not working, but what we can do is take questions from people in the chat and maybe continue our discussion a little bit more. And if that's okay with you, Kevin, I don't know if you've got something to do or...
No, that's fine. I could use a break. Could we come back maybe in 10 minutes? If people want to ask a question, maybe 10:10 we could come back.
Yeah, I've got a break video loaded up to keep people occupied. They can watch while we do whatever you got to do. And if you're watching on Twitch, we finally got the Twitch stream working again. Just hop on over to YouTube if you want to ask a question. Unfortunately, the phones aren't working tonight, but hopefully next week we'll get that sorted out.
Well. And if you are on Twitch, actually, we're also I'm watching our chat on the Restream chat, so we might be able to see that.
Just depends. I guess we'll see. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and jump to that break. And thanks, Kevin, for sticking around. Sorry about all that crap there at the first hour, but I'm glad we got it sorted out. We had a little backup plan. So, but yeah, we'll go ahead and jump, and we'll see you guys in just a little bit.
Saturn, virgin mother of virtue, villainous animals will seek out and hurt you, distort you and twist you and misrepresent you. Your elegant innocence has transformed you into a definite target of manipulations and greedy ravagings of blunder your purity, spoil your seed, shadow you under scrutiny, or hide you entirely from consensus reality. Veritas.
Think I got time to go for my gun, or that's the type of thing that's gonna lose me a little neck?
Yeah, I wouldn't take that.
Fair enough. Think maybe I can reach into this front pocket, get me a smoke.
All right, slow.
Man's about to draw his last breath. You think you could oblige in a little chit chat?
No, those things will kill you.
And his blade won't. So what is it? Robbery?
No.
Vengeance?
Yeah, that's the one.
Oh, that's cute. What are you on a quest? You a man on a mission?
I'm looking for a killer.
We all killers here.
I'm looking for her killer. Yeah. Think you know who I'm trying to find?
Maybe ease up on this blade. We can talk like civilized folk. That's better. So, you're looking for Lyle? Take you to Lyle. Hold on a minute. What's your hurry?
You told me this was Lyle's place. I suggest you get your hand off.
Might not like what you find in there. Better think this through, boy.
Think it through. That's all I've been thinking about for years now.
Can I help you, son?
Is this Lyle Canner's place?
This is Lyle Canner's place.
Yeah. I think you can help me.
Boys! I know you weren't thinking about killing my best Sparky, were you?
Linda.
Lyle lately. I've always been an outlaw, darling. You should have known.
So, all this time?
Yep, all this time.
I came here to kill Lyle Cantor.
Found him.
Hey guys, we're back.
Hey, it's
Kevin's still
time.
taking a short recess, so he'll join in as soon as he can.
And
So what do you think about that out there? It's pretty interesting so far, I would say. What's your biggest takeaway so far, Dan?
well, you know, the whole like he was talking about the whole psychic training with the sex and the drugs and whatnot. It definitely does sound like a party. But apparently, it's not as much of a party as everybody would think. You know, at first glance. I'm sure there is a lot of, you know, like I could see if you're trying to use those as tools to hone your psychic disciplines, how it would indeed not be a party. You know what I mean? Like, the Obermelon ritual, for instance, that's not supposed to be a fun time at all. Like, it's a ritual designed to drive you mad, but, you know, the people who complete it become insanely powerful.
So Kevin's going to rejoin with us here in just a minute. So if you've got a question for Kevin, you want to go ahead and type it into the YouTube now. So this way it'll be up there when he gets back, which will be any second now.
So I'm not sure. At the beginning of the show, we had before Kevin joined us and before we got all of our Skype issues resolved, we were talking about the whole 12 monkey scenario with that missing CDC guy. I just wanted to cut back to something else that somebody sent my way, and I really wonder if... Hey, you good, Kevin?
You there? All right.
What's it? Yeah, Kevin's back with us, guys. This is a headline that came across my radar a little while earlier, and this is, basically dated today. FBI agent and estranged wife found dead in apparent murder-suicide. An FBI agent and a woman were found dead in an apparent murder-suicide outside a home in Crownsville, Maryland on Wednesday. This is in Anne Arundel. After 8 p.m., David Rayner, 52, with multiple stab wounds and an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. Donna Fisher, 54, was found with apparent stab wounds. Both were pronounced dead at the scene. And Rayner joined the FBI in 1996 and had worked at the Bureau's Baltimore field office since 2003. They say this was a domestic situation and not related to any case Rayner was working on. And so, if there's anything I've seen from years of, watching shady stuff come out of the deep state, it's don't believe a damn thing they say. So if they say that's not related to any case that Rayner was working on, that's pretty much a tacit endorsement that it was related to a case that Rayner was working on. And it makes you wonder if maybe he, what exactly did he dig too deep into?
Who knows? There's a lot of piles of shit to dig too deep into.
Yeah. Yeah, there definitely are. So,
all right, so we're back with Kevin. So far, no questions in the chat. I wonder if anybody's back yet from their break. But so let's see, where were we? We were talking about the energetics a little bit and the metals and stuff, that type of stuff that you picked up from your program. Any other positive type things that you learned that you apply in your life now to help you besides that, or?
60 megahertz. You come across a fourth density physical being, but fourth density consciousness, like one of these Nordic Pleiadian Pleiaren beings, and they're resonating at like 350 megahertz. So they're like 300 times more energetic than you are physically, and it's powerful. Like you can feel their presence even as a third density being. It's like, whoa. So the way that I've reversed engineered it, because the Cabal, they're kind of like, they have this like vampire religion where the end justifies the means. So they don't put any morality to it. It's just it's like there's always a bigger fish, so you got to eat the other fish. So that's why they have no problem preying on children. They have no problem preying upon the weak and the innocent, abducting people, using people, literally making clones to become sex slaves, and they literally draw energy upon clones. And I don't want to, there's enough information about what they do, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is well, why are they doing that? And it's like, well, yeah, they're getting high off of it, but it's more than just a psychological, I'm an abuser and you're the abused. It's more than just like a psychological power trip. They're literally vampiring the energy, because in their belief system, they feel that like when they have sex with a child and then they drink their blood and murder that child, they're like somehow absorbing the energy, and now they're resonating at like 1,000 megahertz. And the average idiot, because of his morality and his programming, he would never do that, and that's why he's weak and I'm strong, right? So it's this depraved kind of like vampire religion they have, because they actually think they're vampires. It's weird. It's really weird. That's based on this megahertz thing.
Well, it's pretty much gone mainstream now, and you can
the
go
whole spirit cooking thing.
Well, no, not even that. You can go. There's places selling children's blood for the rich elite to suck on, and they say it extends their life.
These are some
and it's like
stem cells.
It's like it's not a secret or like crazy talk. Like they got a website. Go get some. It's like, and you try to tell somebody that, oh, you're fucking crazy. Whatever. Oh, okay, thanks. So yeah, I mean, it definitely, you could see that.
Yeah. So that's the one side of it. So just to fully answer your question, so people don't think I'm one of those people, how I reverse engineered it is I totally got into like the monoatomics and the cleansing, and like literally eating life food that has its electrics intact, food that has its electrics intact, and the supplements, and literally absorbing the biophoton energy, because our bodies are like batteries. We run on electrons. And so if you basically, if you're not eating or supplementing your diet with live foods, you are dying. It will take a while, but that's what premature aging is. So you gotta make sure you get some life force into you with your food. You gotta do the energy work, the cleansing, the meditation work, all that stuff. And if you do that, you'll feel really, really good. And you don't need to be a sick vampire dude that preys on children or something in order to get that high. You can literally just get it from Mother Nature. But I don't know, because of their belief system, they like to be, I guess they do like to be in control. They like to be the abuser. So there's kind of like a psychological depravity there that's at play,
Well, it's like you said, they they kind of explain it away by saying, oh, it's the bigger fish, so eat or be eaten. Whatever. Man, I had a question for you. Okay, when you said light or live food, I'm sorry. I'm assuming you're talking about like fresh vegetables,
plants that are still alive.
Yeah, just organic produce that is still alive after you pick it and can grow itself. It's known as livsmat. It's a Swedish term for life food, food that's still alive. Like, for example, if you put like a raw potato or a raw piece of garlic out on your counter and it gets sunlight, it'll start growing still. So just food that has its electrics intact. Our bodies really are like batteries. We run on electrons. Like that's the point of digestion. It actually digests things down to the atomic level and subatomic level. And you literally at the deepest level, you actually pull electrics from your food to keep yourself alive and literally feed your light body or your aura. This is where the reincarnation loop happens in terms of like third density. It takes lifetime after lifetime to accumulate enough biophotonic energy until eventually you grow your megahertz from 50 or 60 up to like 300, and then you become like a fourth density being. And then you're still physical, but you're just much more energetic, and you're so energetic and telepathic that once your aura interacts with another person's aura, there's no need for to say things out loud. You can just lock eyes with someone and just tell them what you're thinking. And that's fourth density. Most of the ETs that are interacting with us are actually like still very physical. They're fourth density beings. Then if you evolve from fourth density, eventually you'll get into fifth density, where you shed like a physical body and you're literally just your aura. You're just a light being at that point, which is still, I think, very much ahead of us. And that's why I have a problem with like the new age, some of the new age stuff where like tomorrow we're ascending into the fifth dimension. Of course, that never happens because you have to take self-responsibility. It's evolution. It's still Darwinian evolution. You literally have to accumulate enough biophotonic energy to grow your light body to a point where you will evolve throughout the densities, but that's up to you. It's literally up to what you put into your body. So, that's why I can't stand the new age stuff.
Well, let me ask you this. And you're saying you're using this, you're eating vegetables, plants that are still alive, absorbing the energy. Now with someone, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, I guess I'm just a dark person, but say I was gonna eat Dan and he was alive. Like, now is this something that you think that the Cabal might be doing? Is like live cannibalism, or eating live mice or something? I doubt they would go to that level, that low of a level. Obviously, they'd probably be eating kids or something. And also you hear stories of Draco types or reptilian types eating people. Would they be doing that kind of thing to get that effect too?
Okay, well, to get really technical here, the thing about flesh is as soon as you kill something, once it's dead, the life force has left it, right? But however, certain reptilians are carnivorous, but things need to be alive at the time of the killing. So they eat people alive, to answer your question. Now, I'm assuming if you're eating Dan there, you're going to cook them. And if you're going to cook them, then the life force has already left them, right?
No,
so,
I meant alive.
Okay, well, I guess technically.
Although apparently I'm best when I'm baked.
Yeah, you would. You would. I'm not saying they're wrong, but they are wrong in terms of eating sentient beings while they're alive. And actually, as mammalians, as you know, we have to cook our meat in order to eat it. That's why we're not really meant to eat it. Because if we were meant to eat it, we would actually be a carnivore, and you could just eat raw meat and not get sick, right?
Yeah. We got a question coming in from the YouTube chat. Kevin, do you know what kind of advanced textiles / material your spacesuits / uniforms are made out of? Blissings, supraluminal brostara, star. I don't know what the hell that last part means. What?
Well, hey, that's cool. That's cool. It's something I talked about with Elena during our first conversation. The ICC, they have some really advanced suits, like smart suits. The ones I was in, the Solar Warden ones, it was just a jumpsuit. And we weren't in like astronaut suits because we weren't like actually going out into space. We're inside the craft. These were jumpsuits, except they were they had this mesh in them so that it kept your body odor in. And even if you were to pass wind or something like that, it was filtered. Okay, as silly as that sounds, it kept the body odor in. And the reason was not only for being in close quarters in that, but even interacting with the Nordics and the Greys and other ET beings, they do find hygiene was major. Like they do find body odor to be offensive. And
that's self-disclosure right there in Star Trek, how the Vulcans are always complaining about how humans stink.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, well, exactly. The Nordics, they're very hygienic. And so the reason for the whole jumpsuit thing was to kind of contain everything,
keep the body.
Yeah, the body odor and all that. And then also too, it really contains everything. Like, so you don't even have to wear deodorant. You just put on your suit and you're good to go. And but that's actually not that advanced. I mean, the ICC, like Elena and Anthony Zender, they've talked about like the super soldier suits. That's different. I was never in a super soldier suit that could augment your jumping and your reflexes. And they talk about these suits where, like, if you were about to fall over, like if someone pushed you, it would literally make sure that it would do a reflex for you. So if someone were to try to push you on your back, the suit would just make sure you stayed up.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
So that's really advanced. I was never in a suit like that.
Right.
I was just in a jumpsuit. Yeah.
So Penny just chimed in and said they complain about us, but the Greys are worse than us. I guess she's talking about the way they smell.
Yeah. They're they have a smell. They do have a smell, but it's different than body odor. It's
I would especially wonder, how bad the reptilians smell. Because you ever like smelled the inside of a lizard tank or a snake tank? It smells weird.
Well, yeah, the Greys and reptilians, they do smell. Sorry, I was referring to like the Nordics. The Nordics, they're very hygienic. They don't really have a smell. And
the Nordics use the Greys though, right? Let me just see if I can get this straight here. So Nordics do utilize Greys as clone machine android type worker servants, right?
The small ones, yeah, the small ones.
Okay.
Yeah, then you the real Zetas, like the real reticulum thing, is it's tall. It's a tall one. There's a couple different types. One has a bump on its nose, and then there's one that had, the one I saw, it actually had like a goblin like nose, which is not your typical Gray. It looked like a Gray, but it had like a goblin like nose. It was definitely the scariest thing I've ever seen. It was horrific. It was gross.
So we got another question from Superluminal Brostara. What did you eat on your missions?
They fed you a slurry.
A slurry.
A slurry.
Like slave slop, nutrient based.
Yeah, that's what I think that's what Tony said too.
It was. It's not like you got your bacon and eggs and
matrix paste.
Yeah, it was just a slurry. There was. It's weird. I have a couple memories of actually being in like a mess hall. But this was like when we were on some kind of, like, you're still with them, but you're on like you're not active, you're not doing training, you got kind of some R&R, but you're still in the barracks. And it was like a treat to get like a regular bacon and eggs kind of like breakfast. Like, it was like, oh my God, like we're eating real food. But on the craft, if you're on a mission, you're doing training, you get this slurry, but what's weird is it makes you constipated. So you're drinking it, and you're absorbing like a ton of you're basically absorbing like 90% of it, and just to give you energy, but you wouldn't have to go to the washroom for days. And it kind of made it so that, when you're on a craft or you're doing something that you don't, someone isn't always saying like, oh, I have to go,
Right. Plus it probably cuts down on the amount of farts that the they gotta smell.
Well, yeah,
I'm sorry, I had to go there.
I mean, we are human, right? But it's funny, they did think of that. They did. Between the jumpsuits that contain the body odor, including, I guess, passing wind, farts, and all that, and then they're giving you a slurry that makes you super constipated, but you're still getting a ton of energy and nutrients, almost like an energy drink with all your vitamins and minerals and amino acids and everything.
Sounds like Soylent.
What?
Yeah.
How did you shower?
That's a good question. I don't even remember showering. I don't know. I don't know if we did. I don't know if that's just blocked out. Tony talks about how like the mundane stuff you don't really remember, right? Like brushing your teeth and showering and getting changed. You don't really remember that. You remember the traumatic stuff when like you're sitting in a room and a Gray walks in and sits down across from you, and like that's what you remember. Yeah, so I don't know. I can't answer that.
Okay, we got another one.
Were there any parties or discos?
All right.
Sorry, is that a real question?
Yeah, that was all right. Look, now we're not gonna devolve into trolling here, guys. I mean, were there?
It was not a party environment. You're under like
military service, so yeah, I wouldn't imagine.
Yeah, you're literally. Well, and here's the thing too. Like a lot of people have asked me this. They're like, well, if Elena was your instructor and she was letting you guys drown, then why aren't you like angry at her still, right? Like how are you friends with Elena if your memory is her standing there and she's just like looking down at you coldly and you just drown? Well, I've come to a point where I've realized like Elena wasn't like lucid Elena that you're talking to now. It's not like she was like, oh, okay, I'm going to let these kids drown. It's like everyone is under this weird like entrainment. And I figured out that it's actually an artificial intelligence. It's an AI entrainment, and everyone is under artificial intelligence. That's the point of the nanotech, and they inject you with nanotech, and so everyone in the secret space program is basically like the Borg. And that's why when they do the blank slating and they put you back, only 5% of people remember, and the other 95% have no idea that they were ever a part of the program.
That's why it's a mind wipe prime, as opposed to your typical brand X mind wipe.
Oh boy! So now, would this be the same tech as the black goo, or is it just something similar, or something completely different?
Well, in terms of the ancient predatory AI that's like billions and billions of years old, the black goo appears to be a part of that. It's a sentient fluid. It appears to be like another aspect of the ancient AI. Because what happens is like just to give you an example, like Solar Warden on the TR3, the white TR3, it had an automated AI system that could fly the craft automatically. Because when we were flying in the Arctic, we were over the sinkhole, and the craft lowered into the sinkhole, and then there's this side chamber cut out, and the craft flew in, and like it barely fit into this side chamber, like a couple feet on each side, and a human, because of human error, just looking out like a window, would probably have hit the sides. So they would turn on this, just like now they have cars that park themselves, do the parallel parking by themselves. It was like once the TR3 came up to the base, it like parked itself, and it could like literally fit into a little chamber. So that's like man-made AI, but and even the ETs, the Nordics, they have a lot of automated systems as well. But unfortunately, there's this ancient predatory AI, which is not man-made, and it came from another universe. It's the signal wave, and it will infect man-made AI. So like, when you see these like weird cyborg thing, or I guess not, androids rather, in Japan now, they've done shows where they have these android people, and it's an artificial intelligence. Well, that's man-made, except the actual ancient AI can infect that at any time and just take it over. And then you think, as the engineer, that's the AI that you made, except it's actually been infected by the ancient AI, and that's really dangerous. And
how do you tell them apart?
What's funny is before you got on, while we were trying to work through that, Dan was reading an article about people's Alexas going apeshit and like maniacally laughing in the middle of the night, not responding to him and stuff. So, it makes you wonder, did the black goo get into Amazon? Well, we got another question from the chat. This is from Mick. Was there ever any mention or use of DMT?
I wouldn't say they never told you what they gave you, but like when they did the remote viewing training, the Templars, you had to drink out of like this chalice, right? And that was, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was DMT, ayahuasca, I don't know, but it was like something you drank and you started like tripping out. And because your first unit, you just trained in standard SRV scientific remote viewing, they would basically give you the piece of paper with the coordinates and the pencil, but you'd have like a spotter that kept you focused, and they wanted you, as you were peaking, to do what you just did previously sober, but now you're on the drug. And it was definitely a psychedelic, because it was like, whoa, you're out of body right away, but you've already just trained your mind on how to remote view. So with spotter, kind of kept you on track, and then they just wanted to see if that would like make you jump like way further out, like to look at the future and stuff.
Well, there really is no telling what they could have something that we don't even know about. Some type of hallucinogen or so, whatever it is that, there is no counterpart on Earth to. Maybe the closest thing would be DMT or something. How many humans on Earth are suspected to be part of the SSP without any memory of it? This comes from Tricia.
I guess since World War II, there's been a couple of generations. Like Penny, she's an older generation, and there's been a couple of different generations. And I would say at this point, worldwide, like a couple million people
over the course.
Since after World War II, if you want to say like from 1945 until now,
so about 80
worldwide,
years.
I would say a couple million.
Very interesting.
Wow.
Dan?
It's just a huge number of people to think about how many people are just walking around out there and no idea of
Have no clue
of what they've been through, or
maybe got some weird memories, just write it off as dreams or whatever.
Well, hey, you guys were talking about. I watched that show you did about the guy that at Whiteface Mountain, Lake Placid, that got he ended up in California, right? You know what's really weird is my family took me skiing to Whiteface Mountain in Lake Placid when I was 13. That's probably just coincidence, but it was really tricky because it was on the news here, and my parents, of course, are like, "Oh my God!" They're like, "This guy, he ended up in California," and because they couldn't believe it because my family actually took me skiing. So I've been to Lake Placid, Whiteface Mountain, and so just on that note, like that, I think that might be an example of the infighting that's going on. And what I mean by that is you have these different factions. Some want disclosure, some don't, and others are blackmailing each other with disclosure. So if that guy, he was actually from Toronto, Canada. I think he was a firefighter. So if he was involved in the SSP and he had no memory of it, just to use that as an example, like someone who got blank slated, he has no memory of it. In his waking life, he decided to also be of service as a firefighter. He goes on vacation to United States, and let's say a different faction is underneath Whiteface Mountain. They have a base there. They have a former SSP asset with no memory, and they decide, okay, let's make an example of this guy because they're blackmailing another faction. And what they did is they do this abduction where he ends up in California. The whole point of that is right now people are going to write it off like, oh, that's just like, yeah, he had a concussion and somehow he made it across a continent, delirious or something. But anyway, even the skeptic, my point is that like, if they blackmail that faction for whatever reason, and they can say, well, what if we were to do this 20 times, 30 times, 40 times, 50 times this year? You got people hitting their head and they end up across America, okay? Even the skeptic is going to be like, okay, well, what's going on here? So that's a great way to blackmail another faction that wants to remain covert, and then another faction is threatening to expose them. They abduct one of their former assets and then do that. Sorry, that like I'm just speculating, but I was thinking about that. Yeah,
I mean, it's a good point. I had never thought about it like that. I went down 50,000 different avenues, but that never occurred to me right there. That was part of the game. It's an interesting point.
Well, there was an episode of the new, I think it was the second episode of the new series of X-Files, and you know how at the beginning of the episode, after the credits roll, there's always something like the truth is out there. Well, this time it says, accuse your enemy of that which you are guilty.
Right. Yeah. That's scary, the new X-Files, actually. It's a little, like, on-the-nose disclosure, eh? But
well, yeah, between the episode where all the machines are trying to kill Mulder over a 20% tip at a sushi restaurant, and the episode of Black Mirror where the lady's fighting the dog robot and ends up subduing it with a bucket of paint. It's all pretty scary stuff.
I mean, it's kind of off topic, but I'm sitting there watching that one with the robots, and I'm like, oh my god, it's my worst nightmare coming true right now. It's not a person in sight.
The Mandela Effect episode for me.
Oh yeah,
that one was trippy. They're making fun of it.
Yeah, they were trolling the hell out of it.
It was also like really putting it out there with the Mandela thing.
Yeah, there's another show out there called Counterparts where it's got that J.K. Simmons guy in there, and the whole thing's about like, at some point the timeline split. Before a certain point, I think like in the 1950s, it was one timeline, and then it went into two timelines. And then the further along time gets, the more disparate the timelines are.
Oh, we got another question coming in. What is the relation of the Templars to the SSP?
Yeah, I'm actually really curious about that because somebody had, mentioned to me that the Rosicrucians were also involved with like sex magic rituals, and
I mean, that doesn't surprise me.
And I know the Templars and the Rosicrucians are related orders. So yeah, how do we tell?
I can speak to that. The Templars is actually one of the ICC groups. There's over 30 ICC groups. The ICC, and tracing it back in terms of the money, there's over 200 nobility families worldwide. You got the inner circle, but then the outer circle, the lesser known nobility families, but they're still very, very rich and powerful. And not just in Europe, we're talking Asia, Africa, worldwide. They kind of what will happen is you'll have a couple like nobility families, like 5, 6, 7, 8, that will pool the resources together and create an ICC group. And a good example of that is like in the first Alien movie, with the Whalen Corporation. Mr. Whalen, this billionaire, he has enough money to create his own secret space program. Whalen Corporation, building better worlds, right? And that's like what the ICC has done on Mars. So
in Prometheus 1 and 2, you get to see the early setup of that. And apparently, I also just discovered that the Blade Runner movies and the Alien movies all happen in the same timeline.
I've never seen Blade Runner, okay? I know that sounds ridiculous, but I've never actually even seen the original.
Holy crap, you gotta check
And I'm
that
a
out.
huge sci-fi fan. For some reason, I just haven't seen that movie, but I will definitely watch it because it apparently has to do with like clones and that.
Yeah,
Like
androids.
all the androids are the prototypes for the synthetic officers that are aboard, like the Nostromo and what's the other one, the Sulaco later.
Right. Yeah. So, okay. So yeah, you're right. The Prometheus movie actually also remade that, showed it really well. All the tech you see in the Prometheus movie, that's a perfect example of an ICC group. So back to the Templars. The Templars was kind of the precursor in many ways to a lot of the modern day Freemasons. There's a relation between the Templars and the Freemasons, and so a lot of the nobility families are either Templars and or Freemasons. So the reason why the ICC would have a Templar sect is because a lot of the nobility families to this day are Templars and they're also Freemasons.
Right. From my understanding of it was when they were fleeing persecution, they ended up founding the Scottish Rite.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So, and they're holding another thing. I guess it's rumored because there's no actual physical proof as far as I know that. But, during the Crusades, they picked up the Gnosticism, and that's the sacred geometry and that whole thing, and that's what they were carrying around with them as their secret. And then they founded the Scottish Rite. So it's interesting. I wonder what, because it was the Vatican. Was it the Vatican or was it the King of France that was after them?
I think it was the Pope. It was the Vatican.
Right. So I wonder what exactly happened there, because you would imagine that the Vatican probably has all that same knowledge in their vault, in their library.
What's strange, and this might be more modern, but what's really weird is if you look at what happened in World War II with Hitler's relationship with Mussolini in Italy, Italy also becoming fascist. There was a takeover that happened in the Vatican, at least during the 1930s and World War II, where to this day, as weird as it sounds, the Vatican is more of a Fourth Reich Nazi fascist sect,
right,
opposed to what you would think of as like the Western Jewish Rothschild sect. Yeah.
Well, Zionist.
Zionist, right?
sect.
Yeah, sorry, Zionist. Yeah.
Okay, so we got a clarification.
There are plenty of Jews that don't support Zionism.
We got a clarification here. It was Philip I of France with permission from the Vatican. The whole Templar thing that we were just talking about. That's according to Penny. I'm sure she's correct about that.
Yeah, she knows a lot of history.
I knew France was involved somehow. I just couldn't remember exactly the story. I don't know, there's so much shit banging around in there. I don't even know how you.
I know it's tough too. It's such a sensitive subject, but I know it's tough too because you got the Rothschilds, and they were the Rahkam family in ancient Egypt, and they were the administrators of the empire in ancient Egypt who served Ra-Marduk, and this goes back thousands of years. So secular Judaism. When you're talking about the Rothschilds, people would jump on you and think, "Oh, you're anti-Semitic," but the the Rothschild faction has nothing to do with secular Judaism, like the
or
average
even
Hebrew
normal
person. It has
religious,
nothing to
like
do with
little
that.
Jewish lady on the street Judaism, or like guy. Who
Well,
goes
yeah,
to
that's what I
shul every
mean. That's what I
Saturday
mean. Like
Judaism.
separate, like the average Judaism. I mean that's nothing to do with the Rawcom family,
Right.
the Rothschild family serving Ra Marduk and Anunnaki in ancient Egypt. That's two different things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you know of any Hollywood actors involved with the SSP? Like, for example, Brad Pitt? Or or even fashion industry elites?
Well, unfortunately, like I'm not going to name names, but unfortunately, yeah, a lot of celebrities kind of like sell their soul literally to the devil, except the devil would be the Cabal or the SSP. And yeah, they're willing to be abducted, possessed. They're willing to sell themselves, and that's usually how it goes. Just to give you a little example, even the singer Lizzie Grant, who became Lana Del Rey, they renamed her. They gave her a bunch of plastic surgery. They made her in their image. And she has this song, which is kind of weird. It's called "High by the Beach," and if you watch that music video, she's in this empty house, and this is like after her surgery, and this black helicopter comes flying up and is like buzzing her house, and she ends up running down the stairs to the water, and under this rock, she pulls out this guitar case, and she pulls out this like sci-fi looking like blaster and shoots the black helicopter out of the sky.
Really?
And I think that was her way to artistically say that she's literally sold herself to the devil. She became Lana Del Rey. She's originally Lizzie Grant. They gave her the plastic surgery. They made her in their image. And now she is under constant surveillance. She has sold herself. She can't have a private moment. She is theirs. They own her for the fame. And so she did this thing where she wishes she could just blow them out of the sky, right?
Right. That's pretty crazy.
That's something else. Somebody told. I heard somewhere along the line that Katy Perry was an MK Ultra subject.
It would be what do you call it, Monarch, right?
Yeah.
Monarch, yeah. Well, I don't think you can perform at the Super Bowl without being one. A Monarch programmed person.
That's sort of a prerequisite.
Yeah.
I believe it. Now, somebody else, and this actually ties in with a news headline that kind of came across, I think it was something I wanted to mention because as much as we clown the guy, he did inspire a lot of people to start waking up early on, but way before he jumped the shark. Right. But somebody who I've frequently wondered if maybe they're MK Ultra as well. YouTube is deleting Alex Jones's InfoWars channel.
Is that a question? Do you want me to
No,
comment on that?
I got a question.
Yeah,
YouTube is deleting Alex Jones.
You think there's anything to that? You think Alex Jones himself is an MK Ultra subject?
Well, to be perfectly honest, after what happened in 2008, I was trying to figure out what happened to me. I was I was trying to wake up, and this was actually after North Bay, so this was in like late 2009, early 2010. I did come across Alex Jones, and for a while, my morning ritual was for a couple months there in like 2010. I would wake up, make my morning coffee, and I'd listen to Alex Jones for a couple months. Now, eventually, I just moved on to other things because I found it very repetitive, and also he's just focused on like the surface politics and the conspiracy. And once you start learning about like the ET component, because he never really addresses the ET component. So especially back in 2010, he's just talking about the government. So eventually, after a couple months of that, I mean, it was helpful because in terms of the 9 veils, one of the veils is realizing that there's this global conspiracy or cabal. I think that's like the 6th veil or something. So once you pierce the veils and you move into the ET component and the more esoteric kind of mind expanding stuff, you can kind of move on from Alex Jones. So I outgrew him after listening to him for a couple months, but I'm so grateful for the 2 or 3 months. I mean, man, like he blew my mind for like 2 or 3 months.
I'm surprised. Yeah. I'm surprised you can listen to it for that long being empathic, because that's what happened with me after a while. Like I just couldn't. It would just destroy me, man, psychically. Like I'd be so angry and so pissed off over shit I couldn't do a goddamn thing about. that it would just make me want to claw my damn eyes out, man. That was the main reason why I got away from him.
Yeah.
You know, years ago.
Well, and even when he was good, the stuff that he was coming out and saying wasn't anything that I hadn't heard from G. Edward Griffin or Jim Mars or Bill Cooper or Webster Tarpley.
Mm-hmm. And you know, I kind of feel like, you know, and Alex Jones, he had a purpose. He serves his purpose. But I kind of feel like he's a gatekeeper. You know, like you said, he never talks about the ET component. If anybody tries to bring up Israel in some way like that, he'll jump all, oh, you're Jew haters or whatever. Like, you know, it's not about that. I mean, we know that. But, I mean, you know, I don't know. I go back and forth on him. I actually met the guy in person. I had dinner with him, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
And that's when I was involved with We Are Change back in the
Way
activism
back in
days,
the day.
running around in the street with a bullhorn and shit. But
The good old days.
Nice.
you know, I think at very least he's a gatekeeper. I don't know if he intentionally is a gatekeeper or if it just kind of happens naturally because he doesn't want to look in that direction. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with him.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember in grade 11 philosophy class, my philosophy teacher showed us Waking Life and his In Waking Life.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so when I came across him, like in 2010, like many years later after high school, I realized, oh my God, my philosophy teacher tried to show me that guy. So that's another reason why I was willing to stick with him for a while, because I was like, okay, there's a reason why my philosophy teacher like showed us that movie and Alex was in it. And, you know, I get it. I get what he's trying to do, but there's a much bigger picture.
No, there
He's
is.
still... Yeah, he still thinks that like someone like this cabal, it's just a bunch of like banksters that are trying to destroy the American dream, and I think there's a lot more at play here.
Yeah. I mean, it took me a while. I'm glad I broke out of it, but you know, that was years ago too. So we've got someone asking, how about David Bowie's connection? You know, something about David Bowie connected to all this?
Okay, I got some weird like blanks. I've never really gotten into David Bowie's music, just like I've never seen Blade Runner. Like, you know what I mean? Like I got some random blanks for someone, you know, ask me, and I'll be like, no, I've actually never seen that classic movie, or I've never even gotten into that classic artist. And I know people are huge Bowie fans, and I don't know, I've never listened to his music. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that like for some reason I just skipped him. I just skipped him.
I've heard allegations that he was involved with all sorts of wacky sex magic and underground rituals and stuff, but you know, I don't have any references handy to, you know, to bring up about it.
Who knows? Excuse me. Wouldn't surprise me. I mean, you're talking about a big star in the music industry. Might as well be Hollywood. So, you know, the way that we know how that shit works. And it makes you wonder. And, you know, it's kind of funny, too. And, you know, I'm digressing from the main points here. But you got the whole 27 thing. And I'm wondering if that's connected to any of these programs, these black programs in any way, you know, MK Ultra type programs. The artists who die at the age 27, like big time artists that influence massive amounts of people, all die some weird way when they're 27.
Yeah, the 27 Club. Yeah, I guess Amy Winehouse was the last one. Again, that's another one I skipped, but I know that she died when she was 27, and like I think James Dean, I think was 27, and like a bunch of other people.
Janis Joplin, Kurt
Jimi
Cobain,
Hendrix.
Jimi Hendrix. Yeah.
Yeah, what was the guy from the Doors, Morrison? Wasn't he 27?
Yeah, Jim Morrison. And like I don't want to like remember when I was talking about the Golden Spa. I don't want to say who the woman was because I don't want to sound like an idiot, and I don't want to sound like I have a big ego. But that it was a female comedian in Hollywood.
Gilda Radner.
I'm not saying which comedian, and no, not.
It was Ellen, wasn't it?
No. But no, because I guess she's more interested in.
Yeah, no, that's. I'll just.
Was it anybody who was actually funny?
But that's a trick question. Was it Ellen? No, that's a trick question of the guy. But no, like what we were talking about before, like the people in Hollywood, unfortunately. I think what happens is they sell their bodies in order to be famous. So during their waking life, they get to be that star, and then when they go to sleep at night, they're used as like slaves. And I feel like when I went into that room, it was being recorded, and this female comedian, I don't even think it's not like it was really her. It's not like she was fully lucid and conscious and like, yeah, I'm ordering a male escort tonight. You know, no, it was like she was abducted. I was abducted. and we're under mind control, and then they make us have sex, and it's recorded for them. Those the voyeurs that that orchestrated that.
So is it
Just
like
yeah.
is it like in Strange Days where they have the playback that they can play back other people's experiences?
Sorry, I'm not familiar with Strange Days.
Is it just like regular video, or are they recording this in like another means? Are they taking your memory engrams and like watching that?
There was this movie that came out. It was like late 90s, 97, 98, and it was called Strange Days, and they had these little like Discmen, right? And the Discman came with this thing that fit over your head, and it had like neural link ups and whatnot, and you would have it recording when you did something, right? Like running through the water at the beach, or making love to your special someone, or eating a meal, and it would record all of the sensory input, and then when somebody could take your disc and play it back and relive that memory, or you could relive somebody else's memory, and you would have total haptic, all five or six sense feedback of that exact moment as they experienced it.
That could be. I'm not sure.
There was a black market and illegal memories. Like
I know at the very least, like this, like the upper echelon who think they're vampires, they can't watch regular like pre-recorded pornography. Just like they have to feed on someone that's alive, they have to watch live sex. So that's why they'll abduct people and force people under mind control to have sex and do these rituals, because they get off on it, but they want it to be live, just like feeding on someone. They don't want to watch like a video.
Right.
Do
like,
they get off on the control knowing that there are plenty of people who would do it for free without the mind control?
There are many people that would do it for free without the mind control, but then those people would be fully lucid and would probably talk about it at some point. Right?
I mean, not for the right price.
Plus, I wonder if there's,
I can be bought. Call me.
Plus, I wonder if the whole not wanting to participate has an energetic factor to it too. That maybe they taste better.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They get better on controlling people and making them do shit against their will or without their permission, simply.
Yeah, they have. They have dragon personalities. If you research the Chinese zodiac, the dragon, the year of the dragon, they tend to be more voyeurs, like the year of the dragon people. They prefer to watch, and the Illuminati, for lack of a better term, they definitely prefer to watch. And kind of like vampire, the energy, they like that's the purpose for the blood, sex, magic rituals, to have people do that. And they kind of are off to the side. Like I'm talking about like the really, really high up people. They love watching that stuff. And I mean, they still engage privately, but they have this whole other thing where as their form of entertainment, I mean, like we watch TV and movies and stuff and play video games. Their video game and their movie is watching people that are forced to have sex. And I mean, they still have sex too, and they engage, but then their entertainment when they're relaxing is to watch other people have live sex. It's like a weird thing where they're obsessed with sex because they pull energy from it. So they physically still engage, but then, yeah, even when they're resting, their entertainment is to watch people have sex. It's like they're really obsessed with it for energy purposes.
We hear a lot about bloodlines and possible ET origins and stuff of the Cabal or the Illuminati, whatever you want to call it. What are your feelings on that? What do you think the source of the Cabal is?
Well, I'm just speculating based on some like research and stuff, but I think that there is definitely an Anunnaki kind of connection, but the Anunnaki, they're hybrids, at least the ones that I'm familiar with. They're half Syrian, half Draco hybrids that came here, and they took Homo erectus, an existing hominid, and they genetically modified us into Homo sapiens, and so they use us as primitive workers, but something they found with us being warm-blooded mammalians, and then once they tinkered with our DNA and they basically realized, like it says it in I guess the Bible, like they saw the sons and daughters of man were beautiful and decided to have children unto them. So they realized that we were not just slaves, but they they found us attractive, and so we became sex slaves as well as laborers, primitive workers. And so something I've noticed is that human beings were overly sexualized. If you look at most animals, their sexual organs, they have fur, or their sexual organs are kind of kept more internal. Even males will have like retractable penises, and in the animal kingdom, like the sex organs, they're more internal. We are overly sexualized. We're these naked apes that, and all our sexual organs are just like way out. They're over exaggerated actually, and they're way out in the open. And unfortunately, I think we've been genetically modified to be naked apes with these overly sexualized parts, because we are somewhat sex slaves to the reptilian Anunnaki, and that also makes us very, very dependent on even just making sure we have clothing on to cover up. Like we're always dependent on technology, on even if it's just clothing,
So you would think that what you're saying is the bloodlines that make up these ruling classes are reptilian hybrids. Like the bloodline is a reptilian hybrid bloodline.
Yeah, I think they can trace it back. That they are like the Rackham family in ancient Egypt. They actually have a higher percentage of reptilian than the average person, or at least that's what they believe, and that's why they think they're literally vampires, because the precursor to the modern day vampire is the Anunnaki reptilian. So that they think they're like the fallen angels, and we're the sons and daughters of man that they find beautiful, and they're the giants. But not just giants, they're like, what's also meant by giants is like, because they're the wealthy, they're the royal political elite, like they have a giant fortune, they're all powerful in a materialistic sense. They rule the Babylonian money magic system. So we're just their slaves. We're enslaved by the monetary system. And I mean, we joked about it in this interview, but you're like, oh, like for the right price, I'd be willing to, to do just about anything, every man has his price, right? Well, there you go. There you go.
What?
What?
Yeah.
Just give me a webcam in a dark closet.
Hey, money's money.
Yeah, so anybody else out there on the YouTube chat got a question for Kevin? Dan, you got anything else?
If somebody wanted to start uncovering the paper trail that shows, leads from U.S. federal spending to World Bank spending, or Bank for International spending, Bank for International Settlement spending, to secret space program spending, where would be a good place to start digging be?
Well, okay. I guess technically, in terms of this, because your question's about the secret space program, right?
Well, I mean, Solar Warden
he's trying.
in general,
He's trying to say what he wants to know is how can you connect the Earth money to the ICC?
Yes.
Okay. Sure. A good example of that is, when you research all the gold, the Nazi gold that was taken out of Europe, where did the gold go?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened. The Nazis, they took the gold out of Europe. They fled to South America and Antarctica. They had the gold. They had the specs. But they didn't have the industrial might. They didn't have the infrastructure. So they literally went to America, and the private corporations, the lower military industrial complex people, they said, hey, like, we got the gold and we got the specs, but you have the labor, you have the workers, the engineers, the people that can actually do the work for us. And they made a deal, and then they built that out on Mars, just as one example.
So I've got another question. What does the ICC call itself? Like, what do they refer to themselves as? Because I can't imagine they run around calling themselves the ICC. I mean,
that's a good point. That's like that's just a term. That's just like a modern day exopolitical term, interplanetary corporate conglomerate. It's an adjective.
So there's not an actual organization called the ICC.
No, I wouldn't imagine.
No, because they're so competitive with each other. Like one group, I'm sure they have like their little acronym for each group, and one group is affiliated, like we're the Templars, we're the Freemasons, we're the Knights of Malta, we're whatever the religious sect secret society sect they might be a part of, but then they also have nobility families that are backing them, and those are
So you're saying they don't necessarily have a name for like the lump group of them.
Probably not. I mean,
Yeah.
like ICC. I mean, that's just an adjective that to describe 30 secret space programs that we have on Mars that the royal political elite of our planet has built out, and each one would have its own little name, which is so secret that I mean, it would be really hard to find out what they call themselves. I think.
We got one more coming from.
Well, we got two more actually.
Yeah, we
First
do.
one, have you ever been in an underwater base, and where?
No, not that I can remember. Although underwater bases do exist, I have talked to other experiencers, and there's a lot happening on Earth. It's not just like in the solar system. Like there's a lot happening on Earth. There's underwater bases, underground bases. So a lot of abductees. Even if they're not like in the secret space program, even if they don't leave the planet, a lot of people get taken to like an underwater base. For example, I know that like there was something that happened a couple years ago in the Gulf of Yemen, and it was a sea gate that malfunctioned. An underground base in the Gulf of Yemen had opened up like basically a Stargate, but like a sea gate under the water, and it was malfunctioning, and they couldn't close it, and it created this giant whirlpool that even Google Earth took pictures of. And the I think it was like the Americans and the Russians and a couple other people, they actually blockaded the Gulf of Yemen, and there's this massive whirlpool, and it was literally a portal that they couldn't close, and the world governments were freaking out because they're like, oh my god, like how do we close this thing? And of course, what they told the public was, "Oh, well, we're blockading the Gulf of Yemen due to piracy." But it was weird because like it was a joint effort between the Russians and the Americans and a couple other countries in the area, and they set up this massive naval blockade to block off this one section of the Gulf of Yemen. And Aaron McCullum, who was in the secret space program, but he was particularly involved in underwater bases. And he was in this weird hybridization program where they're actually trying to create super soldiers by mixing dolphin DNA with humans. And
Was
he
that
was
guy
in
on
Project Camelot.
Yeah. I remember watching that years ago.
Yeah, years ago. Yeah,
So,
yeah. But that's an example. So like there's definitely underwater bases. I don't believe I've been to an underwater base, but no, they do exist, and they use sea gates. And I do know that one of the ways they get craft into orbit is actually by using sea gates so they send like a space sub under the water, and then it appears in space, as bizarre as that sounds.
That would explain the design of the older. That would explain the design of the older ships too.
The U-boat style design, and I mean, especially if he had gates like that under New Schwabenland, then that would be
Antarctica.
Yeah,
and Bermuda, like the Bermuda Triangle. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this. This is from Scott Savoy. Have you had any contact with inner Earth beings?
Okay, I did have one telepathic experience, and it was with an iguanodon. So it was a benevolent, I guess, technically reptilian. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think iguanas are vegetarians, if I remember. They eat leaves. Yeah, it was weird because this was like
fruit and bugs.
Fruit and bugs. It was like this iguanodon thing, and it walked upright and had these big brown eyes. And I was camping, and I had like this like telepathic experience where like I could see kind of the outline, like an aura appear. Okay, so with my eyes, I couldn't actually see an iguanodon, but in my mind's eye, when it was communicating with me, I could see it in my mind's eye, and it didn't want to actually show itself to me, but I could see it kind of like the aura, the outline of it standing by my campfire. Walked up, and it was an iguanodon. It said it was from the inner Earth, and the reason why it was contacting me was because it wanted me to know that not all reptilians are bad, that there's like an iguanodon race that existed here before the Draco even arrived. They're like a native race that was evolving here naturally during dinosaur times before the Draco came, and they're still here. They live deep underground, and they might even be like an extra dimensional being at this point. They may have ascended up through the densities, but there's still this iguanodon presence in the inner Earth, and that's just one of the inner Earth groups that I had like a direct telepathic contact with. I can't really comment on the others because, of course, you know, I've researched this stuff. I've heard of other groups. Right. But I don't want to like use another example. So in terms of what I actually experienced, I did this thing definitely approached me when I was camping once, and it telepathically told me it was an iguanodon.
Okay, so we've got 2 from Loyalty Makes You Family. Kevin, how are you able to recall and maintain awareness? I'm not really sure what they mean by that.
I guess if you're on a...
I don't know. Go ahead, Kevin. Yeah. You got anything for that?
I divide it, to try to answer the question, I divide it up like this. I've had my external experiences that like physically happen, like right now, like if I looked out my window right now, that physically happened, and that's the TR3. I've definitely walked underneath it. It's flown over the house at 3:45 a.m., then flew back, and like I definitely have been under the craft, and I've witnessed the TR3. Then I had the experience with the MIB, the MIB in North Bay. That was an ET hybrid, and it was it entrained me like in a coffee shop, and it knew everything about me. And this thing, it looked human, but it also looked a little different. And that was a physical, humanoid ET that I interacted with, like I'm talking to you right now. So those are the physical external experiences that I could literally like do a lie detector test or like look someone dead in the eye and be like, yeah, I talked to that guy in North Bay and he looked like this, and you know what I mean? And like, and then same with the TR3. All the recalls come back in the form of like vivid night terrors, like recurring nightmares that are different from my other dreams that leave me so rattled. And then also too, it's not like just like one nightmare, like it keeps coming back, It's like my deep subconscious is like trying to tell me this is a traumatic memory that the deep subconscious is actually holding on to and is trying to let my conscious mind know about. And so all the recalls comes back in the form of dreams, but you know, that's subjective. So I admit that is subjective, that is anecdotal, and very, very subjective. But I have had the physical external stuff, like even the campfire thing with like the iguanodon. I mean, like I looked over and I felt this presence, and like you could see this like shimmering outline of like this little thing standing there, and like that was somewhat because I was actually awake. I guess that's my point. I've had some experiences where I've actually been awake and it was physical. And then the other stuff, the recalls come back in the form of like vivid, lucid dreams.
Okay, and that same person is asking, what are the black trebs, the TR3Bs?
Yeah.
Is that a specific group?
The black triangles, I've never seen one because I think that's like the really big ones. They're in the United States. You guys got the black TR3s, and I know Europe also has their black TR3s. In Canada and in Australia, and basically the British Commonwealth countries, but definitely Canada, we have like this scaled down version, and it's about 1/3 the size, and it's this little white one. And it patrols the Arctic and the Northern Hemisphere. And it's also used as a transport craft for the Canadian forces and Australia and New Zealand. But United States and some of the European countries, they have the black triangles, and things are massive. They're huge. Like the one I saw was pretty small.
Yeah, I would say that kind of the TR3B kind of is like an umbrella phrase for any type of triangular craft, because there are lots of different types of triangular craft, and there's some that are even like V's. But yeah, that's generally associated with, here in the States, would be the Air Force. From what I understand, that wouldn't be associated with the Navy program. That would be the Air Force program.
Yeah.
Kevin, have you heard of or experienced any missions in Puerto Rico, Polynesian or the Joshua Tree bases?
No. I think those might be again affiliated with the American forces. I know that there was an incident in Malaysia in Penang. Like I wasn't involved in this. This is just like something I researched where they had an incident where I guess a full-blooded Syrian being, like from Sirius C, because you got Sirius A, B, and C. I guess the Syrian C people are like a wolf-like race, like Anubis, like a wolf-headed humanoid. And they had a little incident where there was some fighting going on in Penang in the 1980s, and they had to send in some Black Ops guys because these like wolf-headed Syrian beings were actually physically observing this little like guerrilla warfare thing that was going on. They were like studying humans. And so the government became aware that like we had an infiltration where these wolf-headed Syrian like wolf people were literally running around the forests of Penang and in Malaysia, and they had to actually send in some Black Ops guys to scare them off. And sorry, just because you mentioned Polynesia, that came to mind. But no, I don't. I'm not familiar with those places.
We got a message in on Facebook asking if you could describe what the veils are. I don't know, we were talking about that earlier. What was
right? The 9 veils. That's something Anthony showed me. I've heard of it before, and then he sent me a link and he showed me that. And I should know them off the top of my head, and I don't. I'm still stuck on number 7. I think number 7 is realizing the ET component. Number 6 is like the global conspiracy. And then like the first and second and third, it just has to do with like self-awareness and spiritual growth. But basically what happens is once you go through your spiritual awakening process, you'll eventually realize that the world, like everything is a lie. Right. Everything you've been told is a lie. So you have to come to terms with like waking up, as you know, like that they call it waking up, like the David Icke kind of, thing where, eventually you hit the ET component.
Oh, and that's something that's in Gnostic teachings, right? The veils.
Yeah, anyone can look that up. Just type 9 veils into Google. There's numerous websites where they go over the 9 veils, and I think like number 5 or 6 has to do with like the global cabal. Like you realize that the world is under this global control in terms of like the globalists, and then they're just mid-level managers of the planet. They're actually answering. So like there's an ET agenda that's like veil number 7, and then 8 and 9 gets more like esoteric. It's kind of like the solution. It has to do with transcendence and all that.
Awesome. Well, it's getting kind of late, so I think we're gonna have to cut it. Dude, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for sticking with us for this long too.
Yeah, and
we go way over. We've gone way over what we normally do, and man, it's been an adventure, and we appreciate it a whole bunch.
Yeah, man, and hope you stay safe, and hope to see you again soon. Maybe we'll get you on. Now that we got the new machine gun, we'll be able to do multiple Skype guests at once. So we can those roundtables that we did, we could do that live.
That'd be cool. Yeah, we can definitely do that. And thanks so much for having me on. I'm glad that we figured out a way to do this. Yeah, and I guess I'm hosting it, so I have to end this, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, well, thanks, guys, for signing off. Thanks for having me. I'm going to end this. Thanks, guys.
All right, Kevin, take it easy.
All right, see ya.
Have a good one.
Okay, where are we at? Whoa, we're back here. Whoa. Oh, Kevin had another question. That's all right. I'll have to get him next time. So, guys, that was crazy interesting.
Yeah,
I think I'm gonna have to watch that again because I know I was in and out trying to deal with stuff, and I know I missed some of the good stuff there. So, definitely gonna watch that again. And thanks, guys, for sticking around. Sorry about that rough start there, but I knew something funky was gonna happen, but I was not expecting Skype to act like that. That was just ridiculous. But we appreciate it, guys, and we didn't tell you at the break, but, obviously we've got a Facebook page. We've got this wonderful YouTube page here you can click subscribe on. We also have a group on Facebook, which is great. Wonderful people posting wonderful things. Pretty lighthearted and, nice comedic air in there. It's a good place to have a good time. So if you want to do that, you can go ahead and check that out. It's like Reality Brief, XO News, something like that. But yeah,
And-
thanks guys, and
you know, if you just happen to have maybe $1 burning a hole in your pocket, maybe even 50 cents, you could stop by our Patreon, or we also have realitybrief.bandcamp.com. You can make a one-time donation by naming your price for any one of our MP3s. We make it super easy for you.
you can even name $0. It doesn't matter.
And
If
get it
you
for
want
free.
you can have it for free. And we will be
And-
working on migrating more interviews and stuff over there to the audio format. But
And
you know.
especially if you work third shift, you can download our shows as MP3s and listen to our mindless drivel all through the night, and it will be awesome.
It will drive your coworkers insane. Anyway, thanks again, guys. We will see you next week on Reality Brief.
I'd save the heartache for another life. If I'd have known, I'd make the promise to myself. If I'd have known, the sun can't set, no moon could hang, not on freedoms. We count the stars as they burn out. On frozen waves, the brightest light was beneath us.